Everyone says Targaryens are closer to gods than to men. But they say that because of our dragons. Without them, we're just like everyone else.
The idea that we control the dragons is an illusion. They're a power man should never have trifled with. One that brought Velaryon its doom. If we don't mind our own histories, it will do the same to us. Targaryen must understand this to be king. Or queen. I'm sorry, Rhaenyra. I have wasted the years since you were born, wanting for a son.
From Providence, Rhode Island, welcome to the House of the Dragon with Mary and Blake. It's a podcast dedicated to House of the Dragon on HBO. So sit back, relax, and let's talk about fire and blood. Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Larson.
Gotta tell you, my name is Blake, and that music, forgot how good it is. It's our podcast intro, and it gave me chills. That's how much of a dork I am.
Mm-hmm. Hey, we're all here for it. So, as I said in the beginning, our names are Mary and Blake. We are a professional nerd podcasting couple from the littlest state in the United States, Rhode Island. And we are so excited to be doing this show and covering this show on HBO. Many of you listening may already know us from our other podcasts. We have done many. I don't even know how many we've done by now.
Oh my God, I think we're upwards of 12 or 13
Yeah,
shows.
well over a dozen. And you can see all the things we've done by simply going to maryandblake.com. But if you are here to talk House of the Dragon, so are we. And we're really active on a few social media channels, in particular Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. All you need to do is search Mary and Blake.
And then if you do that, you can also find the Mary and Blake Facebook group, which is a unique and fun environment that is totally free. Just a good place where all the Mary and Blake nerds and what we like to call the Nerd Clan go and talk about all the things that they love, including Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. And that is that. Marvin, holy smokes.
Woo!
We're back, baby. We're back in Westeros.
We sure are.
I'm ready to go. I forgot how much I loved Westeros. I forgot how much I loved being in this world and what it means and the languages and the houses and the sigils and, the house mottos and it just this fine tapestry of mythology. It's just it's like Lord of the Rings. A lot of people argue that, Game of Thrones is kind of a Lord of the Rings ripoff. I mean, I'm not going to go there, but it just feels big and sprawling. And yet, at the same time, I feel like this show is kind of small in a way. And I think we'll get into that once we get into the rest of this episode. But I'm happy. I'm happy that we're back in Westeros. We're here for House of the Dragon. And it just feels good to be back in Game of Thrones world.
Agreed. Well, our friends, when you are listening to this podcast, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button in your podcatcher of choice, as that will allow you to have the newest episode sent straight to your device. On that note, let's get into the show.
All right, my love, this episode was the first episode of House of the Dragon, episode 101, entitled Heirs of the Dragon. The director was Miguel Sapochnik. You know Miguel Sapochnik because he has directed many episodes of Game of Thrones, including, as a matter of fact, The Bells, The Long Night, The Winds of Winter, Battle of the Bastards, Hardhome, and The Gift. I mean, all super, pardon the pun, but hard-hitting episodes of Game of Thrones. And he is the co-showrunner of House of the Dragon. And if you liked his directing style, some other projects that he's been a part of include Falling Skies, Fringe, Banshee, Revolution, Under the Dome, also Masters of Sex, True Detective, and Altered Carbon, as well as Iron Fist. So go check those shows out if you like it. And it feels like Mary, he has some roots in the bad robot J.J. Abrams world when you talk about shows like Revolution and Fringe. So it's just a cool little how you could see a tree of directors and modalities and influences in directing styles and where they begin. The writer was Ryan J. Condal. Now, you may not know that name. That's okay. He, too, is the co-showrunner of House of the Dragon, along with Miguel Sapochnik. And a funny thing, Mary, he was hand-selected by George R.R. Martin, Gurm, as we like to call him, as the rest of the world likes to call him, I suppose, hand-selected to be the writer of this show by Gurm.
Interesting.
Yeah, really, like, he was just this super mega fan, and they became good acquaintances after Ryan Condal approached him about Game of Thrones, and they talked about the world and everything, and he was hand-selected. And Ryan Condal's, works include the movie Hercules, which was not a great film. But also Rampage, which was a better film. In addition to, he was the showrunner and creator of the show Colony, which, by the way, also has another fun little bad robot tie-in, because that was the show that starred Sawyer after Lost.
Yes.
So that's a lot of fun there. And then, of course, he has created House of the Dragon, and he's also the screenwriter for the upcoming Highlander, which is going to star Henry Cavill. And he is also doing the remake of Logan's Run. So some really big stuff here for Ryan Condal, and a really big up-and-coming name in the Hollywood world. So the fact that we have a chance to have him as the showrunner for House of the Dragon, I think, is a really big deal. So that is that. Marvin, we always have a system that we do these things. We go through the director and the writer and the episode title, as well as an episode recap, just very short, and then we get into what we call our flame ratings, for at least for this particular show. So can you give us a small episode recap?
Yeah, of course.
This episode?
So in this episode, for those of you who watch the show in the future, and maybe you've been able to binge, you lucky ducks, in this episode, the premiere, it starts off with a wicked old king who is not feeling well, and he lost his two sons, and so he has no idea who's going to take over the throne. He basically has, I think, a sister, and then some other like prince or something. Oh, it's grandchildren. We got grandchildren. We got an older grandchild daughter, and then a younger grandson. And of course, thanks to just patriarchy being patriarchy, they say, oh, you should give it to the young one. Ha ha ha, the boy. Doesn't matter when they were born. Okay, so then the show mostly takes place with King Viserys, the boy grandson, and he doesn't have his own male heir. He does have a teenage daughter, a young daughter, maybe preteen. I don't really know how old she is. And his wife is currently pregnant with their 5th pregnancy. And he is hoping that it is a boy. Alas, the mother passes away during the grossest birth scene ever, and the baby passes away. It was a boy, but he dies. Viserys, he has a brother who was pretty pumped to potentially be the heir. But at the end of the episode, Viserys says, I'm not giving it to my brother because he's crazy, and I'm going to give it to my daughter instead. And they have like a little crowning ceremony at the Iron Throne.
Interesting. It's an interesting way to start this series. Immediately, we're getting right into it, and you can feel the difference. What I don't want this podcast to be, well, this was Game of Thrones, and this is House of the Dragon, and this is how this was, and this is how this is. I don't want that to be that. And by the way, for those of you listening, Mary and I did podcast about Game of Thrones. We podcasted about the last season. She and I are massive fans of Game of Thrones. I read all the books, or at least up until Winds of Winter, which, of course, we're all waiting for. Mary did not read the books. Just so you know, I did purchase the book Fire and Blood for Mary, but she has not yet read it. So we're going to go from there. What?
Hashtag COVID.
So we're gonna go for this show from the perspective of that we're both show watchers, massive fans of Game of Thrones, and I am pretty well versed in the history of Westeros. And
I'm really good at playing Game of Thrones Risk, so I feel incredibly ready to crush this. No joke, friends. I win.
Mary's
all the
really
time.
good at it, man. She.
Regular Risk, not as much.
But Game of Thrones
Game
Risk?
of Thrones Risk? I am a Targaryen.
Well, you always play House Stark.
I know, but I'm saying I crush the world like
gotcha.
I'm riding a dragon in the
true.
Game of Risk. I know.
You're not lying. Not lying. All right, so as I said before, we have a rating system for all of the episodes of television that we cover. It is specific to each show, and it is in context to that show. So, for example, for This Is Us, we rated it in lemonades, and for Outlander, we rate it in kilts, and for The Last Kingdom, we rate it in shields. And for this particular show, I was going to rate it by dragons, like we did for our Game of Thrones podcast, but I feel like if I rated it in dragons, we are going to be saying dragons constantly, and it's just going to become one of those things where you hear that word and then you realize how awkward it is to say that all the time.
I love how you're saying I, when really it was me who pointed that out to you.
No, it's true. But once you said it, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like,
I was like, oh, what do you think it should be? Well, it should, of course, be dragons.
But then you were right. It's just ridiculous
buddy,
if you say
it's
it
gonna be
constantly.
dragons all the time.
I don't want to do that. So we're going to rate this one in flames. You know what? Because it's dragon adjacent. Okay, and I'll take that. So, Mary, as you know, we rate it in context to each episode, in each show. So a rating of 5 flames is the best version of House of the Dragon, and a rating of 1 flame is the worst version of House of the Dragon. But just because something is 5 for House of the Dragon doesn't mean it's a 5 for This Is Us or Outlander or any other show. It's within context to that show itself. Unless, of course, we get into the 5+ system, which that is a great episode of television overall, regardless of the show. Having said that, Mary, how many flames are you giving episode 1, the premiere, Heirs of the Dragon?
Giving it a 4, a solid 4.
Oh, wow. For those of you who don't know, Mary is a very generous grader, and this is on the low end for her. I am shocked that we got a 4 out of this one.
Then you don't know me too well.
Well, no, I mean, but usually, you're in the 4-5 to 5 range for most episodes of television.
Agreed.
Which is why I'm saying I'm kind of shocked that you're in the 4 range here.
Well, I'll tell you, frequently in premiere episodes of television, I've got a problem getting the train started. And I always said that in regards to Game of Thrones episodes, so this seasons. So this actually, I'm not surprised that this is on the lower side for me, as I find my time in Westeros takes a little while to get going.
That's true.
Plus, new listeners, I'm not good with blood.
Which is ironic, considering how much of a fan of Game of Thrones you are and this world.
And we will get into that. How about you, Blake? What is your Flames rating?
I'm giving this one a 3.9.
This may be the closest we've ever been.
I know. Sometimes we equal, but most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, we're way off.
Yes.
I'm giving this one a 3.9, and that doesn't mean I don't like it. It doesn't mean that I think it's bad or whatever. But Mary, like you, I feel like this is the premiere, and it didn't blow my doors off. It didn't. I think it's good. I think there are great things about it, and I think there are great things to come. Didn't blow my doors off. And that's okay. We'll get into that. Normally now, Mary, we do our GBG, which is our best way of taking the good with the bad. And that is our good, our bad, and our great. So what do you have for your good, your bad, and your great?
All right. My good is Graham McTavish.
Oh, yes.
Who, for those of you who are not giant Graham fans like myself, he seems to be like the personal knight for the princess.
Yes, Princess Rhaenyra.
So he's the one that is talking with her frequently, especially in the beginning, and you see him a couple of times in the episode. And I just love that man, and I will follow him wherever he goes, whether he is a dwarf, a knight, a Scottish Laird's brother. I mean, I am
War chief.
yes.
Get it right.
No, I am getting it right, and I'm putting him in his place. But yeah, I just love that man.
Big fan of Graham McTavish, of course, from how we are most specifically aligned with him, which is Outlander.
Yes. My bad is I did not enjoy how much blood there was in this episode, and I almost could have handled it if it was just on the battlefield. As I said earlier, I am not a blood fan. I find it incredibly gross, but yeah, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you gotta watch some blood. We also podcast about the show The Last Kingdom, for example. A lot of blood in warfare. What really pushed it over for me was the birth scene and how graphic that was, because I feel like there's been other C-section births in television that have still been traumatizing for the viewer, but this was on a whole different level. And I'm in particular thinking about the C-section in The Walking Dead. Which happens in season 1 or season 2. The wife of the lead, she's pregnant. Same thing, baby's breech, and she needs to have the baby cut out. And this is all happening in a different way and different stressful situations because there's zombies all around. But this was just so incredibly bloody. And because I'm not great with blood, but also just as knowledge for our listeners, if you're new, I went through 2 miscarriages last year. So just things around birth and pregnancies are tough for me anyway to watch. And then that was a lot. So that was definitely my bad. And I can totally tell you, I probably will not be rewatching this episode a lot. And if I ever do, I will be skipping through the entire birth scene.
I don't blame you. It was a lot.
And then my great is it's good to be back in Westeros.
Yes, absolutely good to be back. Feels good. And Mary, you bring up the birth scene, and I kind of want to bring this up because that's actually my good. Not necessarily the birth scene itself, but the editing of the birth scene along with the battlefield scene, not battlefield, but the tourney scene, how that was spliced together and what that means for each of the characters, in particular their relationships to their duty and what they're supposed to do in terms of men and how they handle their issues, and women and how they handle their issues within this world. I will say, I'm brought back to our interview with Ira Stephen Bear, who was basically the second in charge of Outlander during seasons 1 and 2, when he talked about the final jail scenes between 2 of the main characters, Jamie and Blackjack Randall, when he said, "Listen, there was this very graphic scene at the end of the season 1, and he's like, listen, this happened. It happened in the books, and we were going to be honest about it, and we weren't going to shy the camera away. We were going to tell the story, and it's up to the listener. It's up to the viewer to accept it for what it is, and if they want to turn away from the
but I feel like
visuals,
there should have been a graphic warning. I feel like there was a proper graphic warning for Outlander, and I know that there's graphic warnings that are written for like sexual assault warning and graphic bloodshed for battles, and I feel like this one deserved a graphic warning for a difficult childbirth scene, because 50% of our population are of child rearing abilities.
More so, to be honest.
Yeah. And,
no, I hear what you're saying.
To me, I feel like there should have just been a little, not that they should have not done it, but I feel like they should have at least warned the viewers, because I don't know if they realize how dramatic, whereas people who watch sexual assault television episodes do mostly get the proper warnings.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think the person that is the devil's advocate would say there is a warning at the beginning of the episode. It tells you that there's graphic content that's going to be coming. There's blood that's coming. Just in the rating systems alone, which are presented to us as viewers before the episode even begins. Mm-hmm. But I agree. I hear what you're saying, that maybe there could be a specific call out before the episode begins, as there are episodes of television that do the certain things for sexual violence, as you said, or or even when we watched Obi-Wan, it was like, hey, listen, there's this scene that's coming up here. This is pretty graphic, and it's because of this. And of course, I don't want to spoil it for those of you who haven't watched it yet, but they have this specific warning ahead of Obi-Wan. So I hear what you're saying, Mary. I get it, but I still appreciate the fact that they were honest to what it was, and as hard as it was to watch, it was even hard for me to watch. But as hard as it was honest, and it's up to the viewer to look at it just at this as the same way as when we were viewers of Outlander watching Wentworth Prison. That felt like, okay, we're gonna tell the story as it is, and we're not gonna shy away. We're gonna be brave and tell it the way that it is. My bad. I will say that there is not a character yet that I can cling to. And that is hard for premieres to do in one way or the other, right? Like if you really like bad guys, there's not like a bad guy to like. And if you like the good guy, there's not a good guy to like. Mm-hmm. There's no, and I hate to keep comparing, and I swear I'm not going to do this, but there's no Arya, right?
No, you can. Here's the thing. I don't think we should feel bad about comparing Game of Thrones. I 100% don't. Should we be doing it the entire time? No. Will this show grow its own legs and we can think about it in its own way? You bet. But I agree. There's no...
If you wanted to use, I hear what you're saying. If you want to use a different analogy, okay, let's talk Lost. There's no Hurley, right? There's no one that you can immediately say, or there's no Jack. Yes, okay, boom, I'm in on this character. Mm-hmm. But again, since we're talking about it, we're in the Game of Thrones world. There's no Arya, there's no Jon Snow, there's no Tyrion, and really, if you're into the bad guy like I am. There's no Jaime Lannister. Like, mm-hmm. It's just kind of people who are there and they have their motivations, but they're not someone that I'm immediately magnetized towards, right? And I think that's hard to do in premieres. It's a special thing to do in premieres. So I don't blame the show for not having one yet, but it's difficult. But my great, though, and it kind of goes along this line of, okay, we're in the Game of Thrones world, but we're in our own show. And I love the fact that the show immediately just brings us back into the world, and it shows us, the dragons instantly. And then it shows us all the different places we are, with which we are familiar from the Game of Thrones world almost instantly, but they're doing it in ways that are completely different than what the visual language of Game of Thrones established. Like when we saw the Red Keep, you see it from an angle that you've never really seen before. It's like kind of down low from more a straight on view, as opposed to like the high up, profile view of the Red Keep that we got in Game of Thrones. It's just a different perspective. It's saying, yes, we are part of this world, but the visual language is saying we're part of this world, but we're going to give you something different. We're going to give you our own take. And then when we go through the Red Keep itself, and we see the space where Cersei had the world or Westeros painted on the floor.
Oh my God, I didn't even recognize that.
We see that. We see the staircase where the Mountain and the Hound fought each other. But again, it's all from a different perspective. We're all seeing it in different angles that we normally did not see them in Game of Thrones. I just think that is so smart of the showrunners, and I love the fact that we were given our introduction back to the world in a way that's comforting but visually distinct. Mm-hmm. See what I'm saying? What I'm saying? Mm-hmm. All right, so what we like to do here on Mary and Blake Media for all of our shows is that we actually like to include as much of listener feedback as we can, because it's not just us who have a voice. It's you, and your voice deserves to be heard. We just happen to be two nerds with microphones in front of our faces. So we encourage you to get in touch with us. We encourage you to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or even leave us voicemail messages at maryandblake.com. Just click the voicemail button and you'll be sent right to our voicemail box. And you can have your voice heard on a little segment we like to call The Small Council. Marvin, are you ready to get in?
Sure am.
Let's do it.
His Grace has many cares. He entrusts some small matters to us that we might lighten the load.
We are the lords of small matters here.
All right, so this one comes from Jennifer Barrett on Facebook. She says, after just one episode, I'm all in on House of the Dragon. The various characters and the performances instantly drew me in, whereas it typically takes me several episodes to warm up to a new show. And since I have no basis for comparison when calculating my flame rating, I'll consider this episode in relation to episodes of Game of Thrones. My rating, 4 flames. My good, the establishment of character relationships and power dynamics, which is essential for my engagement with any television show. My bad. Not really the show's fault, but I kept expecting to see pointed ears sticking out from all the flowing platinum blonde locks on the characters. I didn't notice this on Game of Thrones when it was only Daenerys, but the multitude of characters walking around with elvish-looking Lord of the Rings hair was a tad bit distracting. Yes, I totally agree. My great. The casting is truly inspired, especially Paddy Considine and Matt Smith. Neither of them seem like obvious choices for this show, but they're knocking it out of the proverbial park so far. Same goes for Emma Darcy, who effortlessly fills the screen and commands our attention as Princess Rhaenyra. I can't wait to hear your thoughts, along with the rest of my illustrious Nerd Clan colleagues.
Teresa Conley McGuire says 4 flames, great premiere. Her good was the pacing for this episode. It worked well. Her bad was I haven't warmed up to the new characters yet. Extra bad was that horrible birthing scene, that poor woman and mother. And Teresa's great was that she loved all of the costumes, set, and world building. Bonus great Outlander actors appearing in the new show. Overall, the show, in her opinion, is off to a great start. She enjoyed the episode a lot and was covered in the episode. She said a lot was covered in the episode, but pacing was well done. She's immersed in this new world with the familiar callbacks to the future Game of Thrones.
Russell McVicker says 3.5 flames. He also says, I realized I had a lot of introductions to make, situations to describe, and I didn't care for all the dark interior scenes, which seemed to be more than 50% of the first episode, in which I had difficulty even making out faces. I was straining my eyes. Only deep character thus far is Daemon, emotionally moved by the Queen's death, but aggrieved in a brothel, given menial jobs when he felt he should be the hand of the king. He's defeated in the tournament and then scorned as the heir for a remark he made while drunk and grieving. I'm sure others will follow suit, but I was expecting that winter is coming and was not disappointed, other than it wouldn't be for another 170 plus years. Overall, not bad, but nothing spectacular so far. So generally, like we said, Mary, we like to include our listener feedback. We don't go crazy with it unless there is, of course, a request for listener feedback episodes, which we have done in the past for other shows. But we're going to keep it, relatively calm for the first episode, only a few. And if people want more, we'll do more episodes. So, Mary, it's funny because the show invites this, so I feel like we have to start with this. And that's the ending, the prophecy, if you will, from Aegon the Conqueror, that
winter is coming.
Yeah, winter is coming. Viserys says this to Princess Rhaenyra, that it's not just, this isn't glory filled. This is not a glorious thing. This is the hardest job in all of Westeros. And not only that, Mary, it's the most dangerous seat in Westeros, the Iron Throne. And on top of all of that, we have this inherent knowledge of this prophecy that winter is coming, and it has been passed down from Aegon the Conqueror all the way down to Viserys, and now it's being passed to Rhaenyra. And the big deal of this is that it's called a Song of Ice and Fire, obviously, but this is knowledge that is connecting Game of Thrones to House of the Dragon. And implicit in this prophecy is that this knowledge is lost somewhere because we don't have that knowledge in Game of Thrones, and it helps recontextualize Game of Thrones in a different way. Did you like the fact that this was included, or did you not? And do you think it helps House of the Dragon in any particular way?
I particularly liked it. I liked that they included this. You know, one of the things that captivated me so much for the Game of Thrones premiere, and once again, I don't care. I am comparing shows. I am here for it. It's Westeros. It's a prequel. It's happening.
Yeah.
It's happening.
I think the funny thing is, too, Mary, like, the show kind of invites it. It kind of invites its own comparison because of this, like, as I said, this prophecy, but it also includes Game of Thrones in the title. It's like Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon. And I would also like to say that if the show was like completely separate, if it was in the world, but like the way that Prometheus was kind of completely separate from Alien, you know, so it didn't really make sense to compare the two because they were both visually different. The language was different. At the same time, House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones are so visually similar in many, like the lighting and the style, and I mean, including Miguel Sapochnik is directing these episodes as the showrunner. I think you're right in a sense that it does invite its own comparisons.
So that being said, we start Game of Thrones with that incredible scene of the White Walker, like, you know, all those people in the north being slain and their bodies all weird, and then nothing else comes of it for the rest of the episode, and honestly for quite some time.
It's true.
You're sitting there scratching your head with this looming mystery. And one of the things that I worry about when it comes to prequels is we already kind of know what happens because we know the future, right?
Yeah,
So
we call
know
that
things.
George Lucas syndrome.
And you know who you can care about, you know which families are going to rise. But in this note, because this takes place, 175, 200 years before Daenerys is even born, I just love that the king was so adamant about there is going to be this war that includes the entire human race. That is why the conqueror, Aegon the Conqueror, conquered everything.
Yeah.
Not just because he wanted to rule everybody, but actually because we need all people to fight this crazy thing from the north. And we're going to need all the help we can get. And it's coming. And we're the only ones that know. And you could tell that he's passionate about this. You could tell that he cares deeply about it. The poor thing, it doesn't even happen for 200 years.
Little does he know.
Yeah.
And
so it's going to be interesting to me because, like you said, it becomes less of a reality. Like, it's not properly passed down through the Targaryens because Daenerys doesn't know about it. So at what point is it with the princess that she doesn't talk about it, that she doesn't think about it? Is this lost? Is this just for us? Is this our White Walker scene? Winter is coming, but that's it.
yeah, that's fair. And it's also fair to start wondering when that knowledge is lost. Is it lost with Rhaenyra? Does she pass it down to her kid? I mean, when you think about it, the difference from, the time difference is 172 years. That's essentially 2 generations. You're looking at Viserys' kid, Rhaenyra, and then Rhaenyra probably has a child, and then that child probably has, the Mad King, who we all know is when the Targaryens fall off the planet, right? So, or at least overthrown by Robert Baratheon. So, when in that 172 years is that missing, and how does it go missing? Why is it missing? It's an interesting question.
And how does that dagger leave the Targaryens?
Good point. That's a great point, because that's the thing that comes back, right? So very interesting.
So it's these little things that, to me, that is the White Walker scene, that we're going to get this and we're going to know about it as the viewers, but we may never talk about it again for a very long time.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's the show just trying to help recontextualize the Game of Thrones, but also giving this weight to the kingdom so that you have an understanding of what it really means to be a Targaryen. And, not give you a clue as to where it's going, but an understanding of what is going to be lost.
What I didn't understand in that conversation was when he said that their being in control of the dragons is a facade, that it's not true. I don't understand. Does that mean...
Well, like, they're not really in control of the dragons. Like, they the way that I took it was that they have a partnership, and they're not gods. They don't control them. They know how to utilize them, and eventually, this is all going to go away. And even Rhaenyra is smart enough to say, yeah, people think we're gods, but we're not. We're regular people. We just have dragons. And again, that is something that the show is acknowledging. And I think that the show is smart to just acknowledge this off the jump. That way they get it done. And it's like, it's, we talk about a lot, Mary, about infections in talking and just getting them fixed, whether it's conversations with loved ones or, talking about how shows deal with things or how people deal with things. If there's something that's bad and it's infected, do the work right away, cut it out, get it out of your system. That way it's gone and it's over and you can heal. I think the show is well aware of the fact that Game of Thrones itself ended in a way that was extraordinarily controversial. And it knew, okay, we gotta kind of acknowledge this right away. And I think even, to be honest, the opening scene of Rhaenyra flying on the dragon, I think that's purposeful. I don't want to say that it's an apology, but I don't think it's a coincidence that Rhaenyra, the way that she was sitting, the way that when she comes off the dragon, they don't show her face immediately. Her hairstyle is very similar to what Daenerys had. I'm not sure if it's an apology. I'm not sure if it's like, hey, this is what could have been. But it felt purposeful.
I didn't feel that way.
It felt purposeful, like, this is the thing that we want to do.
I saw it as the person on the dragon doesn't matter right now, or trying to show you this grand landscape and that there's a dragon.
Yep.
With someone with platinum hair on top.
Fair enough. I mean, I get you. I'm throwing that. I just throwing that out there. Just coffee talk. Okay, talk amongst yourselves. What do you think about? You mentioned the White Walker scene in Game of Thrones as the first scene, which I thought was a brilliant introduction to that world. There is a vast difference to what happened in this particular episode, which is almost like a prologue. Lots of exposition. You're being told what's going on, and it's introducing you to the history of the Targaryens in a way that I did not expect. What did you think of the prologue that was given?
Of her flying?
No. Of her, of King Jaehaerys and how that whole process began, and
to me, I took it as once upon a time.
Yeah.
An old king had to choose between two grandchildren. A girl who was older and looked wiser and just frankly cooler. Looked like she could actually do the job. And then a jabroni who looked like he didn't want it at all with his pregnant wife.
But he got it anyway.
But he got it anyway because he's a dude.
So I guess it's probably indicative of the world that's to come and the problem that is going to be created as a result of the choice that is made from this prologue. And normally I'm a person who I like when television shows and movies just throw you right into the world. Like it, take for example Breaking Bad. The first scene is of the flying pants, if you remember, right? And you're like, wait, why is there flying pants? Why are there people like wearing gas masks? Why are we in an RV? Like, what is happening? So I like when when a show or a film throws you right into the world and expects you to just catch up. You're sorry, this world has been living without you, and it will continue living without you when the episode stops, and you just have to keep up. However, given the nature of the sprawling mythology of the Targaryen family in Westeros itself. Do you think that was a smart choice to give us the prologue so we had an understanding in the context of the decision and what leads to these problems?
I also think it's important for us to understand the relationship of the options, the people who are options, just where they are in the Targaryen family tree.
I got you. No, I get you. And I kind of want to go over all the characters here because there are a lot of characters and a lot of new people. And even though you think you're familiar with the Game of Thrones world, I mean, we're so far back in time that you don't know who's who, what's what, where families stand. You don't know anything. And before I do that, though, I do want to have this conversation about why the reviews for this episode were all over the place. Like either it was better than Game of Thrones or it was like really not great. Or then you have something in the middle, like kind of where we are, where it's like, hey, this is good, but... And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that peace and happiness and establishment, it's boring. What we like as viewers is change. And we like and pardon the use of the word, but the violence and the violent nature of change. And not like, oh, I'm going to kill you with a sword, but like the action of change is violent. Not physical violence, but just the transformation of it and how things happen and, what comes of it, and ideas and thoughts and people. It's just a violent act. And that's the idea that we were, I think, thrust into for Game of Thrones and many other shows. The drama is in the change. So when we see a society at its highest level of being, like imagine watching a show about the Roman Empire where it's the highest level of being and it just works. And it just works. That sucks. That's boring. I don't want to see something be great all the time. I want to see why it falls. I want to see who does the act.
I mean, I love to see things that are great all the time. But,
but I think you get the premise of what I'm saying.
Yes, Blake. Give us some drama.
So do you think that's why the reviews are all over the place? Because there isn't this inherent, like, oh, things are messed up. And this is the reason why.
No, I mean, honestly, this is a lower rated show for me as of the premiere episode than normal. So I appreciate that reviews are all over the place. I appreciate that what people like and love, people like and love. And I also appreciate that what people didn't like about this episode, I get it. And this is not a show that I, Mary Larson, would be super excited to watch next week if I wasn't podcasting about it and if I wasn't already a huge Game of Thrones fan.
Right.
There's no one that I love, and I need to love somebody in the first episode. I need to be rooting for somebody, and I've learned over the years, thanks to podcasting, that I need to have patience. That sometimes
we learned that especially with The Last Kingdom.
Yes, it did take me a while to love someone in The Last Kingdom. So I'm here and I am being patient and I am looking towards the things that I do like. And I think that that's part of the thing is maybe we don't know who we're supposed to love. I mean, this is a weird, incestual, crazy dragon riding family that maybe we always need to feel on edge about. They're all a little batty. So that's okay. But I found the gore to be a bit too much. I found the sex to be a bit too much. Like Game of Thrones pushed things. They pushed the gore. They pushed the sex on screen and what they would depict. And I feel like this episode came in being like, just in case you forgot, we're HBO and we could do whatever we want because we're HBO.
So you feel like they were checking boxes almost?
Yeah. Let's do blood. Let's do blood in a way that people haven't seen it. Oh, let's do like a really gruesome C-section. Perfect. Awesome. Here for it. Great. What else can we do? Oh, yeah, we need sex. Let's just have like a full-out brothel scene, bubbies flying everywhere, people doing all sorts of styles. I want to see like every Kama Sutra style in one shot. Do it now. Boom, check. Whereas I feel like, yes, we had sex in the first episode of Game of Thrones, and it was incestual, but it was that. And then we had the pushing of a child off a tower.
Yeah.
And it was these things that were still brutal and still shook us. But I almost feel like this show is like, oh, we can't play small. Because people expect, gore. They expect in-your-face, lewd-natured things. So let's just give it all to them. And I'm hoping that this show doesn't have to continue the same level of gore and sex that it did in the premiere, because I feel like that's a cop-out.
Yeah, like it's almost like they're using it as a crutch. I think you're saying.
Like, okay, A, we're HBO and we can do this because we can.
Yeah.
B, this is the Game of Thrones world where you're used to blood, gore, and lots of naked people having sex in all weird ways. And C, you're used to being shocked with gore.
Yeah. Could you argue though that they're using it as a palette setter where it's like, okay, remember, this is the world that you were in, and we're going to dive back in.
I'm just saying I don't want the next episode to be the same level.
Understood.
We get it.
Yeah, okay, I got you. And the funny thing is, Mary, too, you brought up, like Bran, hashtag spoilers, getting pushed out the window.
It's not a spoiler, Blake. Stop.
I'm saying it in jest, Marvin.
Oh, my God, okay.
You mentioned Bran being pushed out the window. And the funny thing is, I think what happens in this episode is that there's no... I mean, like, there is a moment of change, and there is a, a cause of action, if you will. Like, there's this moment that sets the rest of the story off, which is Rhaenyra gets selected as the heir. Okay, that is the inciting incident, if you will. Okay, but I think what. Again, I said that at the top of our episode that this episode didn't blow my doors off, because there wasn't a moment where I was like, whoa, like, wow, okay. Like, when Bran got pushed out the window, that was a shocking moment. And not just for the sake of the shock, because what that meant for the Lannisters, what that meant for the Starks, how that informed character choices, that was purposeful. And it's not to say that the inciting incident for House of the Dragon isn't this big, giant, gobsmacking moment. It actually is within context of the show. But as a viewer, I feel like we saw that coming. Like we pretty much knew that was going to happen, given how Daemon was acting, given how the High Council was speaking with King Viserys, the way that King Viserys was, understood that, yeah, it's my brother, so he's got to be around. I'm not going to just, get rid of him. I feel like we all saw that coming, and that wasn't the moment that I think the show thought it was. And I also don't think the passing of the knowledge of Aegon the Conqueror all the way down to Rhaenyra, I don't think that was the moment the show thought it was.
I wish that they had, a White Walker theme playing subtly during that speech. I think that would have been quite an interesting element.
Yep. All right, so what do you think, Marvin? You want to go over all the characters that we have here?
Okay.
Just to get a basic understanding of where we are, what we're doing, and who we're dealing with? Okay. First, we have the king, Jaehaerys. He is the guy that is the old king at the beginning. We're in Harrenhal, because Harrenhal is the largest... at the time, the largest kingdom or the largest building that could hold all of the lords and all the ladies and all the people from all of Westeros in one place. And that is where they have the ceremony to decide who is going to be the heir to Jaehaerys I. Okay, Jaehaerys I has a granddaughter who is Rhaenys. Rhaenys is the person that is the eldest daughter of his eldest son, so she has somewhat of a claim to the throne. His son, both of his sons, had passed away. So she is the next in line, technically, according to blood. Although we have this other person who is Viserys. Now, Viserys is the eldest son of his second son. So that technically would put him behind Rhaenys in a familial, if we're thinking in terms of the English monarchy, right? He's kind of like the Prince Harry, if you will, I guess. Or he's like the the next person in line after what would be William, okay?
He would be Albie. He would be Prince Harry's son.
Oh, yeah, good point. Yeah, good point. And then he's standing next to his pregnant wife, which I imagine is Rhaenys.
Wait, who's his pregnant wife?
Yeah, his pregnant wife.
Viserys' his pregnant wife?
Yeah, and she's...
It's not Rhaenys.
No. She's pregnant with Rhaenys, I imagine.
Rhaenyra?
Rhaenyra. I'm sorry.
Rhaenyra.
You're right. You're right. I'm sorry. And his pregnant wife, her name is Aemma. Next, we have, of course... That is Princess Rhaenyra, who is the daughter of Aemma and Viserys. That is the person, around whom most of this episode is focused. Mm-hmm. At the same time, we have Viserys' brother, Daemon, who was played by Matt Smith. And that was a person, you obviously know who Daemon is and what he has been doing. Then Daemon was once the Master of Laws. But of course, he believed that they didn't apply to him, so he was then made a master of coin. But then, at that point, he decided he liked spending money more than he liked counting it. So then they made him the commander of the city watch, which we are all familiar with the
left
city.
And right.
Yes, that's right. And then we have the rest of the small council, where we have Otto Hightower, who is the hand of the king. And then we have Lord Lehman Beesbury, and he is the master of coin, and a guy who hedges his bets, if you will. Then we have Lord Corlys Velaryon, who is the master of ships. We have Grand Maester Mellos, and Lord Lionel Strong, who is the master of laws. And those are the major players that we have so far. We also have Otto Hightower's daughter, who he sends to go visit the king after Aemma dies, and she reads him a book. And she is the best friend of Queen Rhaenyra. Princess Rhaenyra. And those are the major players that we have.
These people have too many names that are like too much like each other. So we're just going to make sure we always call her Princess Rhaenyra.
Yes. Okay. So now we have our setting of the table here for most of the characters. Did any of them stand out to you in any particular way with any decisions that were made, or how they're acting?
Okay. First, we got to just let the lay of the land. This family is grossly incestual. Okay? Yes. Everybody ends up having babies with their brother or sister. This is just how it was in the Targaryen situation. I'm grossed out. Obviously, the Lannisters in Game of Thrones do this all the time. They're just banging left and right. But I feel like that's coming down the road.
Yeah.
Okay? Daemon putting that necklace on Princess Rhaenyra.
Oh, we're getting huge incest vibes off of that.
Gross. Uncomfortably gross. And this is something, too, that I'm just I want to find out her age. And I know, once again, things are different age-wise in this universe, but it just like red flags. Red flags left and right. Well, your niece.
To be honest, in the world, the logistics of the world itself, I mean, the Targaryens did this to maintain the purity of their blood, right? So it wasn't just because, we feel like Didlin are sisters and cousins and brothers or whatever. It's because,
yeah, but
we
also
believe
that's
that
probably why Aemma lost so many babies. Incest doesn't bode well for the offspring.
Agreed.
Okay? Makes them crazy, makes them have a lot of issues developmentally.
Which is why King Ares, the Mad King, it's theorized that he went mad because of the incest. Just it turned his brain into popcorn, and that's why he went banana land.
Yeah,
right. So you bring up a great thing, Mary, and that is why King Viserys. Well, the birthing and how the queen lost the babies and everything, and everybody's looking at King Viserys as this genuinely great guy, which, to be honest, I feel like he is, which probably doesn't bode well for his character, given the world.
Die.
He's absolutely going to croak.
He's got that boo-boo that just won't heal on the back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That is not going to end well for King Viserys. But I think a subtle thing here is he really that great of a guy? Because he is pushing his wife to have more children when they probably know we probably shouldn't be having more kids. And the only reason why he's doing it is to get a male heir.
I get it, though, because this has been the situation since his grandfather died.
And that's the point. Like, that's the idea, right?
And part of me wonders if that's why the grandfather even chose him to begin with. Because, you already got a pregnant wife. 50-50, it's a boy. Mm-hmm. Let's do it. I mean, obviously, they also picked him because he was a guy. I'm just saying it's going to be gross. There's going to be people hooking up with cousins and brothers and all sorts of weird things. And it's just not going to be good, friends. If you don't like incest, just hold on tight. That's all I'm saying. I don't like it, but gross.
I mean, it is what it is. And again, within the context of the show.
You know nothing, Jon Snow, and he sure didn't.
Within the context of the show, I think it makes sense to what it is.
Okay. Can we move on from incest?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Can we move on to fire?
What do you mean?
One of the things that I always found so interesting about Daenerys is how fire didn't hurt her.
Oh,
you know, how
yes.
she walked into the pyre and out she came with the born dragons. And when King Viserys has that wound on his back and it's not healing, and they're like, okay, can we cauterize it? It's not even like, of course you can, because heat doesn't hurt me.
Right, but maybe he's keeping that a secret.
And then he's putting his hands just delicately above all those candles by the dragon skull.
Yeah.
And I don't think he can withstand heat. Just like his brother, or Daenerys' brother couldn't. I don't think King Viserys
Wow, that is a great
can
take.
do it, because he's just lightly touching it, and he doesn't seem confident and cocky when he's like, oh, of course you can cauterize.
Wow, that is a great take, Mary, because I took it the exact opposite. Not the cauterizing part, but more specifically the flame part. I was looking at it like he had his hand in that flame, and he was looking at it like, yeah, this doesn't hurt me at all.
I took it very differently.
And it's fascinating that we can take one scene and take completely opposite perspectives from that. I was looking at it like he is the true king. He is a true Targaryen. This is what a Targaryen is supposed to be.
But just like Daenerys' brother, same bloodline, and he couldn't handle the heat. So
Right.
Are you worthy? Are you worthy of the dragons? Now, we're not seeing the king ride a dragon. We're seeing Princess Rhaenyra ride the dragon.
Yes.
So who, I think that there's layers, levels of how worthy of a Targaryen you are based upon your dragon abilities and the heat. Because even Daenerys, taking a tub, she took a wicked hot tub and she kind of seeked out heat. You know what I mean? There
Yes.
were loads of candles and flames, loads of flames throughout this episode
Yes.
in candlelight, which helps beautifully set the scene. Once again, I like that the Targaryens are almost always surrounded by fire, but when I saw that candle, I saw it as what other people do when they put their hands above the flames.
Wow,
is this
interesting.
really warm? How much can I handle? Versus, I didn't see him doing something that a normal person couldn't do in
Yep.
regards to heat.
And there's also speaking of that too, Mary, there's this great scene as Princess Rhaenyra is being, introduced as the next heir. It shows her her being introduced to the world as the next heir. She's standing in front of the crowd, and the first shot of her is of a flame, and then the focus changes, and then it goes she's in the background, way out of focus, just profile view, and then the focus changes from the flame, and it focuses on her through the flame.
So I think we're going to see her do stuff with heat and fire.
Yeah, very interesting stuff.
Okay, so we got the fire situation. I'm going to keep a close eye on how much fire is involved in Daemon. I'm going to keep a close eye on how much fire is involved in the cousins of Princess Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
So the whole Targaryen line, but in my opinion, the King Targaryen, he doesn't got it. He doesn't have the Targaryen magic.
See, I think that he does, and I think that also highlights how tragic of a fall it was for Daenerys. Because if you look at it as though, okay, if you can withstand flame, that means you're a true worthy Targaryen, okay? if he can withstand the flame, that means he is a true worthy Targaryen, which thereby, implicit in that, means Daenerys was too, and yet she still fell from grace. And how tragic is that, right?
I mean,
and like the world
but what is
fell
a true
apart because
worthy
of her.
Targaryen?
That's the point,
You
right?
know,
Like,
I see a true worthy Targaryen not being good, but being powerful, like a dragon, having strength and fire and domination. But it doesn't mean that they're right, and it doesn't mean that they're good.
yeah, which
And I do not see this king as a strong king. I see him very kind. He's got his little like clay village he's working on. He loved his wife. You know, he's going to try to make up for being a bad dad.
You know, he would be into train sets.
Oh my gosh. Oh, 100%. Okay? Like he gets like a hug. All right? I'm hopeful for him. I'm hopeful for him. I hope he doesn't go away, and I hope he doesn't go crazy. But I don't think he's like a worthy guy.
I don't think he's long for this world. As a matter of fact, I think within the next 2 episodes, he's croaked. I think he's croaked. And you know what? Here's what we like to do too in Mary and Blake Media is we like to have our theories.
Okay.
Some of them we used to call them our theories of the week or whatever. And lately they've turned into hot takes. So here's a hot take for you. Okay. I feel like we're setting it up, or the show is setting it up so that King Viserys dies, and we believe that there's going to be a civil war between Rhaenyra and Daemon, because it feels like the show is setting those two up as adversaries. But
I don't think so. I think they're going to bang.
Well, that was what I was going to say. I also think because of the necklace scene and how he comforts her, Rhaenyra, when he's like, your dad needs you right now. Like, that was an honest moment.
I think he's worthy of fire.
Daemon?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I want to see him on a dragon.
Oh, well, yeah, we technically did.
When? Oh,
When he
see,
flew away.
exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
He's going to be fine with heat. In my opinion, he's going to be fine with heat.
I guess what I'm getting at is this. I feel like to the common audience member, the show is setting up Daemon versus Rhaenyra.
I don't.
But let's just go with the fact that, let's just say that they are. I don't think that was what's going to happen, because I think you're right. I think they team up. I think they get together. There's some incest going on with that relationship, and they're actually going to fight Rhaenys for the crown. I think that is going to be the civil war.
Yeah, I think that we are not meant to love Targaryens. I don't think we are meant to trust Targaryens as the meek viewer.
Yeah.
This isn't Lorelai Gilmore from Gilmore Girls. I think if we look at Daenerys Targaryen as a true Targaryen, worthy of walking through fire and birthing dragons after a long drought of dragons being born, of flying dragons, if that is the epitome of a Targaryen, a conqueress, then you need to know that that is what is going to win in this show. And so rather than rooting for the king with his boo-boos, okay, that's not like...
That ain't it.
No.
It's funny because at the beginning of the show, and as it alludes to in the prologue, Jaehaerys knew one thing, and that it wasn't going to be the outside of the world.
The old dying king.
Yeah, the dying king knew that the outside world wasn't going to be what took down the Targaryens. It's kind of like the Avengers in Civil War. Yeah. Zemo knew that anybody that tried to fight the Avengers was going to lose. But if the Avengers killed themselves, that's how they would fall.
Yes.
And that's the way that I look at this. It's a matter of succession and how that falls apart. And I think that's probably one of the more intriguing things of what this show is going to be about. And that's why I said at the top of our episode, as big as House of the Dragon is, and as like beautiful and clearly it has far more of a budget than what Game of Thrones did when it first began, because of the equity that Game of Thrones gave it. as big and as beautiful as it is, it's actually a far smaller show in scope because we are focusing particularly on one family. Now, that doesn't mean like we won't get, I think, conflicts with like the guy that took Daemon down in the jousting scene, Criston Cole. Mm-hmm. Like, I think we're going to get more of him. I'm sure we're going to get more of the Hightower brother that Daemon defeated.
Yes.
Like, that's going to happen. And, I'm sure that there's going to be more relations between, I think her name is, what the heck's her name? Like the Hightower daughter. I can't remember her name.
Just the princess's best friend.
The princess's best friend. Off the top of my head, I can't remember it. But I think we're going to get more of her and how she was sent by Otto Hightower, by the way, who seemed like a pretty good dude until he sent his daughter to the pigs and make sure that she wears her mother's dress. Like, you think that he is a good dude until he sends his daughter off to the king to like go be a plaything.
Gross.
Does the king actually take advantage of that?
I don't think he did in that moment, but it's not to say that doesn't happen again.
Right, and it's not to say that this guy's wife just did die, right? Mm-hmm. And Otto Hightower is looking at it like, I'm the hand of the king, and if I'm going to continue to be relevant here, I have to attach myself some way to this king, and if that has to be through my daughter, that's what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. Again, there's no one that is a moral compass yet. And that is interesting. It's an interesting way in. But I guess when you're dealing with the Targaryens and the height of their power and their moral compass as it stands, you're probably not going to get one of those.
No, that's why I'm saying, like, I don't think there's going to be a good person. And if you're a good person, you die.
If there is one good person that I feel like could come in,
it's Graham McTavish.
No, it's.
I'm voting on him. I'm voting on.
You're not going to be wrong.
Princess Rhaenyra's trusty knight, Graham McTavish.
We're probably going to get more of him. But here's a dark horse. Okay, Criston Cole.
Who's that?
That's the guy that beat Daemon and said instead of killing him, he said yield.
Yes.
That's a guy I think...
And then he wanted the princess's favor.
Right. That's a guy I feel like
he had
could
like the
be an
90s
issue.
hair.
Oh, yeah.
He's like straight from the cast of Boy Meets World.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, yep.
He's the Sean, what's his name?
Just Sean. We'll call him Sean.
Sean, sure. Whatever.
He's probably going to die.
I don't know. I think that guy has been set up to be a thing.
Okay.
Like for the fact that he beats Daemon the way that he does and allows him to live.
Yep.
I think that's a huge thing.
I agree.
By the way, that scene, the jousting scene, I know it was intercut with the birthing scene, but the jousting scene was beautifully shot. Especially that shot that was when, it's from a perspective and they have the giant, I can't remember the name of the goddamn thing, but the big joust, right? And they're riding at each other. Like that shot was stunning.
Agreed.
And you know what I'm also a big fan of? One of our listeners said they were getting a Spirit Halloween feel from it, but I loved Daemon's armor. In fact, all of the armor, especially like the Hightower armor with the big tower with the fire, that stuff is all, pardon the turn of phrase, but flames. Just like really great stuff. Did you get a Spirit Halloween feel from Daemon's armor, or did you like it?
No, I'm pretty sure that we saw those as Halloween costumes.
I don't care.
Year.
I think Daemon's I love his armor, number one, but I think he's an interesting character because like there's that scene where he can't perform, and why? Like, is it self-loathing? Is it hatred?
He's just got a lot on his mind.
That's what I'm getting at.
To me, it wasn't that, because we've seen performance issues in the past when the person wasn't interested in that partner for one reason or another. And like, obviously he likes that woman. She flirts with them later on when they're having some drinks and he's saying bad stuff. And then also he takes her on the dragon at the end. So to me, it wasn't like a performance issue that he didn't like that partner, nor was it that he's never done that before. To me, it was like, this is what we do all the time. Yeah. But I took it as I've got a lot on my mind.
Yeah. And when you consider the fact that he just basically dismembered all of the criminals in
I mean,
in
that
King's
would do
Landing.
it for me.
Yet at the same time, we have such a great moment of vulnerability when he does comfort Rhaenyra. And like it felt genuinely honest to me. And I really love the fact that Matt Smith, who, you know, we've all associated with Doctor Who after all these years, someone who feel like when you, and like if you're a fan of The Crown, you knew him as
Prince Philip. Wasn't he
Prince Philip.
Tarzan?
No, that was what the heck was his name? I can't remember the guy's name. Hold on, I'll get it.
Alexander.
Alexander Skarsgård.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good, because I was looking at him and I was thinking, you couldn't have been Tarzan. You're not hot enough.
No, he's not. But he's kind of weird looking, but in an attractive way.
No, all Targaryens are weird looking. On purpose.
Well, yeah.
It happens when you have incest.
That's true. But I think Matt Smith is a person that's capable of, and especially in light of this episode, I think he's capable of being that person that you can honestly believe wants to do the right thing, but also snide enough to keep pushing people like he does with Otto Hightower. Mm-hmm. And a little tapped enough to do what he does to all the criminals in King's Landing, but believe he's doing the right thing. Not because he's, you know, a chaos monger, but because, no, I'm doing this thing because you told me to do it. You told me to take care of this place. And guess what? We're having all these people come to King's Landing, and this place is going to be safe because of me. Not you, me. Like, I think Matt Smith is capable of delivering on this character. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. And I like the complexity, you know, that he does have, you know, for example, when he's telling the princess, okay, you're the one that has to go say Dracarys, like you need to light the fire to burn up your mom and your brother. So I think I'm excited about his complex character because I think he's actually the only one who I have seen multiple sides of from this episode. So he's the most complex character so far based upon the pilot, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the show is doing an honest effort to give Rhaenyra some more characterization. Like off the jump, we see that she is a, maybe a mid-teen who clearly is rough and tumble. She's like Arya Stark, but she's like a blend of Arya and Sansa at the same time. Someone who doesn't really want to listen to the patriarchy, loves riding dragons, wants to do her own thing, but also somebody who respects the royalty of it all, and it seems to appreciate the pageantry of it all as well. So there aren't these, and I hate to say it, but there aren't these archetypes that you can invest in. They're all kind of muddied because they're all things at once. I guess in reality, they're people, like they're real people.
Well, yeah, and it's the premiere and we don't know them enough.
Yeah.
I also am interested to see what the relationship is like between the princess and her best friend. I don't know if there's anything more to that.
Yeah, I feel like there's something alluded to there, yeah.
Yeah, particularly from the best friend's perspective, whether it's romantic, whether it's I have other motives. So I was seeing a lot of conflict from the best friend. The princess, I just feel like she's living la-di-da. But the best friend, sometimes it looked sad to me. And to me, I didn't know if it's because she's longing for Princess Rhaenyra or if her dad's been grooming her that you're going to need to sleep with one of the Targaryens in some way, shape, or form. That is your duty. Once again, like your job is child rearing, and you're going to have to sleep with someone in her family.
Yep. All right. One last final hot take that I have. Lord Corlys mentions this big problem happening in the East. Don't sleep on that. I think the guy's name that he said was Kragus. That's the name that was causing this uprising in the East. Don't sleep on this uprising.
Sounds like a pirate.
Yeah, I think that's what it's meant to be.
Oh, I like it. It's like Pirates of the Caribbean.
I think this is going to be an issue, and it's a blink and you'll miss moment, and it's one of those things that like it was thrown in, and you think, oh, it's just conversation, but I think this is bigger than what it's led to believe.
Okay.
So that is that. Marvin, you got anything else for
that is it.
This? All right, that's it. Let's close it out, shall we? First episode of House of the Dragon. Interesting. All right, here we go.
As we said earlier in this episode, we would love to connect with you. We're very, very active on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And after each episode, we do put up a post on Facebook and Instagram asking for your feedback, as you get to hear us read some earlier ones. That's where it happens. So the night of the episode airing, you head on over to Mary and Blake on Facebook or Instagram. Let us know your thoughts, and your GBG, your Flames rating, may be read on our podcast.
And also, too, do consider giving us a voicemail. We love including your voice, your actual voice in this podcast. So go to maryandblake.com, click on the voicemail button, and it'll go right to our voicemail box. You don't have to worry about me answering the phone. It'll go straight to it, and it works directly from your iPhone or your desktop that you're on, or whatever smart device you're on. It works that way as well. And none of this is possible without our members at jointhenerdclan.com. That is a very special place, a place that you don't want to miss out on. We have a bunch of extra stuff, extra things that are happening, extra episodes of Mary and Blake Media, book clubs, early instant reactions or knee-jerk reactions to other shows that we're not necessarily podcasting about, but we do want to talk about. If you find that you love shows like Succession or Obi-Wan or The Umbrella Academy or whatever, we're doing knee-jerk reactions to those shows, among many others at jointhenerdclan.com. And of course, free swag.
Hey,
everybody wants free swag from Mary and Blake Media because it's the best swag on the planet.
We want to thank Roxanne FS, who has already written a review for House of Dragon with Mary and Blake on Apple Podcasts. She wrote, "Dragons, yay. I'm so stoked to watch the show with one of my favorite podcaster duos. Love your other podcasts and being a part of the Nerd Clan." Roxanne, thank you so much, friends.
You know what, Roxanne? For being the first reviewer, you send me a message. Send me a message at maryandblakemedia@gmail.com, and I'm sending you something free from the Mary and Blake store. Okay? So that's it. I really appreciate the effort there. And
All
that's
right.
that.
My name's Mary.
My name is Blake.
And we've been in the House of the Dragon.
All right.